The first time I saw the house, it looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. A frame roof half collapsed under years of snow, porch swallowed by ivy, the faint outline of a for sale sign half buried in weeds. The mountain air carried that damp sweetness of pine and decay, the kind that makes you feel both alive and unwelcome at the same time. I'd been driving for hours, climbing narrow switchbacks that coiled higher into the Colorado range, until the city noise disappeared and all that was left was wind and silence. After the year I'd had, silence was all I wanted. The divorce had emptied me out. 15 years of marriage reduced to signatures and division tables. Lisa taking the house, the furniture, and most of the savings. She said she needed a fresh start, which apparently meant moving in with her yoga instructor. Meanwhile, I ended up in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like old cigarettes and loneliness. My contracting business barely stayed afloat, and I woke up each day with the same hollow thought: start over. Somehow, that's when the county auction listing appeared in my inbox: an abandoned mountain property near Fairplay. Starting bid, $9,000. No one else placed a single offer. 12 grand later, I held the deed to 2 acres of forest and a house so neglected it was practically a corpse. Perfect. Something broken I could fix. I spent months planning the renovation. Miguel, my longtime subcontractor, agreed to meet me there the first weekend of spring. The idea was simple: document everything, budget materials, and spend the next year rebuilding the cabin from the ground up. Turn it into something that could sell for $60,000, maybe $70,000. Enough to buy a decent place and finally feel human again. The morning we drove up, clouds moved low through the peaks like ghosts. Pine needles glistened from last night's rain. Miguel rode shotgun, tapping his pen against a yellow notepad, muttering about lumber prices. The smell of wet earth and gasoline filled the truck. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where I start over. But as we rounded the final bend, I slammed the brakes so hard the coffee spilled across the dashboard. The driveway wasn't empty. There were cars parked there: a silver SUV, a rusted sedan, and a bright pink tricycle tipped over in the mud. The porch, once gray and rotted in the photos, had been freshly painted. Curtains in the windows. Smoke rising from the chimney. For a moment, I thought we had the wrong address. But then I saw the mailbox. My name, same property number, same county seal on the stake I'd hammered in myself last month. This was my house, and somebody else was living in it. Miguel looked at me, eyebrows raised. Boss, you sure this is the right place? I nodded, gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make it creak. We stepped out. The air was sharp, cold, the kind that cuts straight through your lungs. Children's toys littered the yard: plastic dump trucks, a jump rope tangled in the grass. A woman's voice echoed faintly from inside, something about lunch. I walked up the porch steps, my boots sinking into freshly painted boards. The smell of bacon drifted out the window. I knocked once, twice. The door opened before the third. A woman stood there, maybe mid-40s, blonde hair pulled tight, holding a coffee mug like she'd been expecting me. Behind her, the house looked nothing like the photos: walls painted beige, new furniture, family pictures hanging where broken studs used to be. For a moment, I just stood there, completely disoriented. Then I held up the folder with my deed inside. "This is my property," I said. She smiled the way people do when they think you're joking. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Then she laughed. "Oh, sweetie," she said, waving her mug toward the living room. "We've been here over a year. Adverse possession laws. You might want to look that up." And before I could respond, she closed the door. I just stood there, staring at the wood grain inches from my nose, hearing muffled laughter from inside hers, and maybe a man's voice somewhere deeper in the house. The smell of food drifted through the cracks. My food, my kitchen, my house. Miguel shifted uneasily beside me. What the hell was that? I didn't answer, because I didn't have one. All I could think about was the county records, how everything had been checked, cleared, signed. No liens, no claims, no tenants. Yet here I was, holding legal proof of ownership while a stranger's family ate lunch in my dining room. We walked back to the truck, gravel crunching under our boots. The silence pressed heavy. I looked once more at the cabin, the smoke curling from its chimney into the gray sky, and something in my chest twisted hard. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was violation. By the time we reached the bottom of the mountain, the anger had started to settle into something sharper. I'd spent years fixing other people's messes, houses, roofs, lives. But this wasn't repairable with tools or wood. This was war. I didn't know it yet, but that woman Karen Hutchins had been preparing for this confrontation long before I showed up. And by stepping onto that porch, I'd walked straight into her trap. Next morning, I drove up the winding trail with a trunk full of paint, brushes, and groceries. The air smelled of pine and rain. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world finally remembered how to breathe. But the peace didn't last long. The moment I turned the bend near the old mailbox, I saw smoke, thin, gray, rising from the chimney. At first, I smiled. Maybe some local hikers had taken shelter from the cold. It happened before. I'd always left a note inside that said, "If you're stuck, stay safe, just clean up after." But when I parked near the porch, something felt wrong. There were curtains in the windows. Fresh ones. A children's bicycle leaned against the steps. And the porch, the one I built with my father, had been freshly painted. Not the deep cedar brown I remembered, but a blinding beige, like every other house in those gated suburban neighborhoods down in the valley. I knocked. No answer. Then I heard a voice, a woman's voice, sharp, controlling. "Kids, stay inside." The door opened just a crack. She looked like she'd stepped out of a real estate brochure. Neat hair, pearl earrings, the kind of stare that measured everything and everyone. "Yes," she said. Not hi, not who are you, just yes, like she already owned the place. "I think there's been some mistake," I said. "This is my property." Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. "That's funny. My husband and I bought this house 6 months ago. The realtor said it was foreclosed." I felt my pulse climb. "That's impossible. This house has never been for sale." She folded her arms. "Then maybe you should call your lawyer." Before I could respond, a man came to the door. Broad shoulders, sunburned face, wearing a property of HOA sweatshirt. He looked me up and down like I was trespassing. "Problem here?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You're living in my house." He chuckled. "Not anymore, buddy. Papers are signed, taxes paid. Maybe check with your bank." I stepped forward, trying to keep calm. "Listen, this place belonged to my family. It's not part of any development. No HOA, no realtor." That's when the woman Karen, as I'd later learn, crossed her arms tighter and said, "Well, it is now." Behind her, I noticed the wall. The one my father had carved initials into when I was 12. It was gone, painted over in beige. I left before my temper got the best of me. Back in my truck, I sat for a long time staring at the house. The garden was trimmed, the old barn demolished, and a metal HOA community patrol sign stood near the fence. I didn't know how, but Karen's family had moved in. And they had paperwork. That night, I called the county clerk's office. The man on the line sighed before I even finished explaining. "You're not the first," he said. "That mountain's been redrawn into the Oak Valley HOA district. Some developers bought parcels years ago, and the county updated the zoning. If no one paid taxes on a section, it got absorbed. Like my family's land was just a missing puzzle piece for someone's gated fantasy." I barely slept. The next morning, I drove back up again, this time with my father's old deeds, signed in ink that still smelled like the 1970s. When I reached the gate, it was locked. A "No Trespassing" HOA property sign hung across the chain. And below it, a note: "Unauthorized entry will result in legal action." Signed, Karen Whitmore, HOA Vice President of my own land. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. They had moved into my father's home, repainted his walls, and were now threatening me with trespassing. I backed the truck away, heart hammering. They wanted a fight. Fine. They were going to get one. For a week straight, I couldn't think about anything else. Every meal tasted like dust. Every dream started in that house and ended with those beige walls swallowing my father's memory hole. Karen's family had planted themselves like weeds. And the HOA sign out front was a flag of conquest. But I wasn't going to let them win. I started digging. First stop was the county records office, the same building where my grandfather had filed the original land deed in 1954. I knew the clerk there, an older man named Harris who'd worked behind that counter since before computers came in. When I slid my documents across the desk, he frowned. "Haven't seen these in a while." He clicked through his system, squinting at the screen. Then his eyebrows shot up. "Well, would you look at that?" According to this, the property was abandoned, and ownership reverted to the Oak Valley Homeowners Association 3 years ago. Abandoned. I said, I pay taxes on that land every year. He shrugged. Not according to their file. I leaned in. Their file. He turned the monitor toward me. There it was, a digital document stamped with my property number, and a fake signature where mine should have been. See that? He said, that's not your signature, is it? Not even close. It wasn't just fake. It was lazy. The strokes were off, the loops wrong. Whoever forged it didn't know my father's habit of signing with 2 dots under the J. I took a photo of the screen. Harris lowered his voice. Be careful, son. That HOA's got lawyers who eat this stuff for breakfast. You'll need more than photos. He was right. So I went digging deeper. Turns out, the Oak Valley HOA wasn't some neighborhood association. It was a private developer. One of those companies that buys rural land, builds luxury homes, and slaps an HOA label on top to control everything from mailbox colors to bird feeders. Their name kept popping up in lawsuits across the county, all following the same pattern: find abandoned-looking properties, fake the paperwork, sell them to buyers like Karen, and bury any complaints in red tape until the original owners gave up. But I wasn't giving up. That night, I drove back up the mountain. Didn't take the main road, took the old trail through the pines, the one Dad and I used to use when the river flooded. Parked far enough that my headlights wouldn't be seen. The house glowed with warm light. Laughter came from inside. Her kids were running around the porch that I'd built with my bare hands. I crept closer, not to scare them, but to see. The front windows were new, curtains drawn, but through a gap, I could see the living room. They'd torn down the old stone fireplace, hung family portraits where Dad's mounted elk used to be, even replaced the handmade shelves with store-bought ones. It didn't even look like my house anymore. And then I saw something that stopped me cold. On the dining table sat a folder, blue cover, stamped with the logo, Oak Valley HOA Development Committee. Underneath it, in small print, property transfer files, lot 73B. That was my lot. I took a photo through the window. Blurry, but legible enough. As I turned to leave, I heard a voice from behind me, enjoying the view. It was Karen's husband. Flashlight in one hand, a baseball bat in the other. I stepped out of the shadows, slow. Didn't mean to scare you. Just visiting my father's land. He smirked. Your father's dead. This land isn't his anymore. The way he said it cold, final hit a nerve I didn't know I still had. You stole it, I said quietly. He laughed. We bought it. Maybe next time. Keep up with your taxes. Before I could answer, Karen appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Should I call the police, honey? He grinned wider. No need. He was just leaving. And he was right. For now, because what they didn't know was that the photo I took of that folder would be enough to open an investigation. I left the mountain that night with a plan. Step 1. Prove the forgery. Step 2. Expose the HOA for land fraud. Step 3. Take back what's mine. And if they wanted a war, I'd give them one. It took me 3 months to build my case. 3 months of phone calls, notarized statements, and quiet drives up that mountain, watching my family's home sit behind someone else's curtains. But I wasn't alone anymore. Turns out, I wasn't the only one they'd done this to. 3 other families in the county had nearly identical stories: abandoned land, HOA absorption, paperwork errors, same developer name, same signatures. And when you line up all those signatures, every single one of them had the same crooked R, the kind you'd only write if you were tracing from a copy. I sent the evidence to the State Land Commission, along with Harris's statement and a certified copy of the original deed signed by my grandfather in 1954. After that, I waited. Karen didn't. She started calling me. First to gloat, then to threaten. If you don't stop trespassing, we'll file for harassment. I didn't answer. I let her voice go straight to voicemail, each message more desperate than the last. Then one morning, I woke to a call from Harris. Check the news, he said. The headline hit me like a hammer. Oak Valley HOA under investigation for property fraud and forgery. Agents raided their office, seized hard drives, and froze accounts. The man who'd signed the fake deeds, their legal consultant, confessed in exchange for immunity. He admitted the association had backdated hundreds of documents to expand their development boundary illegally, and my land. It was right at the center of it all. The state declared every affected parcel invalidly transferred, mine included. Ownership restored to the original deed holders. I drove up that mountain the same day the order came through. Karen's SUV was still in the driveway. Boxes on the porch. Her husband stood near the truck bed, face red, shouting into his phone. She saw me first. You can't just, they told us, this isn't. I held up the document. Official seal. State signature. This says otherwise. She went quiet. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind cutting through the pines. Then her little boy came out holding a toy car, confused, asking if they were leaving. Karen didn't answer. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost, but then I saw the beige paint still covering my father's initials under the porch beam. That sympathy burned away. They left that afternoon. Didn't say a word. Didn't look back. By evening, the mountain was silent again. I stood in the doorway of the old house, listening to the echo of my own boots on the wood floors. Everything smelled like dust and paint thinner, but beneath it, faint, was the scent of pine and oil and home. It took months to undo what they'd done. Repainted the porch. Sanded down the walls until my father's carving came through again. J+D, 1978. Some nights, I sit by the fire, the new one I built where there's used to be, and I think about how close I came to losing it all. People like Karen think they can own everything. The land, the view, even the rules of nature. But the mountain doesn't play by their laws. A month after they left, a storm rolled through. Landslides tore through the lower roads, wiping out half of Oak Valley's new homes. The HOA folded soon after, buried in lawsuits and dead. My house stood untouched. It always had. Now, when the sun sets over the ridge and the creek glows gold again, I whisper the same words my father once told me. This land doesn't just feed us. It remembers us, and it does. Every pine, every stone, every breath of wind through those hills, it remembers who fought for it and who didn't belong here.